Coventry North West, welcome to Jim, who's with us tonight, and to Colleen. All three are MPs on parade, and lots of you here for a wonderful evening we're going to have listening to Angela Rayner. I'll come to Angela in a moment, but I have to give one small announcement first. We have a raffle tonight, is that right, Rachel? Raffle tonight, and we have a bottle of House Commons whiskey duly signed by Jeremy and by Angela and by lesser mortals such as myself, Colleen and Jim. So I hope you'll all join us in that. It's a very, very great pleasure, a genuinely great pleasure to have Angela here tonight. She's no stranger to Coventry. She's up here in the election. Couldn't keep her away. She turned the tide for us. It was after your visit that we suddenly felt this great surge coming through Coventry. And as you know, it was all three MPs who more than doubled their majority. As I told Mrs. May recently in question time, we're very pleased to welcome her here as an absolutely Labour stronghold. Thanks for coming up then, Angela. Thanks very much for coming up now, despite your new stardom, or because of it. I think you all have read that Angela's been nominated by the very respectable magazine, The Spectator. Why she had to choose that one, I don't know, as the rising star of the new Parliament. There you are. Who could resist that? The rising star. Rising to respectability, I don't think she's known before, with the Spectator endorsing her. Now, whether that's a compliment or otherwise, I'm not sure, but I can tell you, she's not a rising star. She is a star. She's an absolute star of our party. And what I like most about her, and it's a deep liking of her, is that she represents all that's good about the Labour Party, all our decent principles, morals, ethics that we stand for embodied in you. They really are, and I'm so pleased to think that I can share that with you, and we can share that here tonight in the Coventry. Here we're North West, as you know, but Jim's here from the south and Colleen's here from the north east. We've got the whole of Coventry in its great strength. Our leader here tonight as well, and chairman of my own party is here tonight as well, and many others from the council. So, Angela, there's no need for me to go on anymore, but to simply say, we know you're going to go away about 9 o'clock, just before 9, so without anything further from me, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I've been called many things, and I quite like the idea of being a surge. That is good. It means we're going somewhere, and we're not just going somewhere, we're going in a passion, and that's what I like to think as well. And you know, I've already made one mistake since I got here tonight. I went to the chip and asked for a chip balm. I went chip, I went Edward. I had to get Jeffrey's assistant to help me out, dig me out of a hole. But I'm all right for Coventry City of Culture, because you're not against Manchester, so I can wholeheartedly swing behind, because we know you're going to win later this year. But as Jeffrey said, I did come here in my little bus. I had my little bus tour, and it was little, it was massive. I thought it was great, actually. And then Jeremy rang me up during the general election and said, and actually I got about 10 phone calls from various different people from Jeremy's office, and I'd done a press conference that morning, so I thought, oh crap, I've done something wrong. I'd gone, Jeremy had asked me if I wanted to say the last thing, and I'd just gone off on one and not really stuck to the script, and I thought, as I do, and I thought, I'm in trouble, you know. And then when Jeremy's ringing me as well, I thought, oh no, this is really bad. I was ignoring the other calls because I was having breakfast, and then Jeremy rings me and he says, Angela, he says, I've got a favour to ask. I'm like, you're getting all excited. Jeremy wants a favour of me. And he said, I'm thinking of going on the BBC to do the leaders debate. And he said, but I'm only going to do it if I know that my commitments as part of the campaign tour are dealt with. And he said, I'd be absolutely honoured if you would take the rest of my campaign tour for today. I was like, okay, not really knowing what I was, getting myself in for, thinking, doing the bus tour that I had. And I enjoyed it on the bus. It was good fun, especially coming to Coventry. But, oh my God, coming to doing Jeremy's bus tour was like playing Wembley. I was like, whoa. And I think, to be honest, I've been in the Labour Party now for quite a number of years, and I've knocked on doors, and for a long time we felt that we were just one step up from Jehovah's Witness. You knock on the door, Hiya, I'm sorry to bother you, I'm from the Labour Party. You know, you're apologising before you've even trying to wedge your foot in the door so they don't shut it on you. You know, just try and just open. You could speak to one member of the family and convert them, let alone the rest on the list. You know, I'm not trying my luck with the rest of them. And that's how it was for a long time. But the change in the atmosphere and the environment that we were in as part of that general election, you know, instead of me trying to knock on doors, people were running out of their doors and saying, "Oh, Labour, I'm going to be voting for you." And it really felt great. And that's why I was so concerned with what we were being told, really, because all of the pundits, the special people that know everything about anything, were saying that we're all doomed. And, you know, we were all feeling a bit like that. And I'll admit that those of us in Jeremy's team as well was thinking we hadn't really been given the opportunity to set our stall out before we were thrust into a general election that we wasn't expecting. Jeremy had said to me, "Angie, develop a national education service," and then John McDonnell told the world that I was going to be the Nye Bevan of education. I was like, thanks. It's like, sink or swim, Ange. And Jeremy said, "I've got every faith in you." And then he said, "We've got a general election, so can you do it quickly?" So I was a bit like feeling a bit, you know, worried about where we was. But the only reason that our general election was as successful as it was is because, quite frankly, we didn't have the time to consult every big wig in the country of what we were doing. We listened to you. We listened to the beating heart of the Labour Party, which for so long we hadn't. We gathered the information because you have the answers. You knew where we were going wrong, you knew what we was doing right, and you knew what we needed, and we had that information. We just wasn't listening for too long, I think. And we're all guilty of it. I've been, you know, as a trade union rep, people look to you and they expect you to have the answers. And you feel as a person of leadership or somebody who's in a position of power that you have to provide the answers. But one of the things I learned in the general election is actually by listening to people, you can find the answers to everything. So our manifesto was an absolute triumph for every single one of you who have been lifelong or just about coming into the Labour Party, all those that really encouraged us, built our party to the movement that it is today, the biggest socialist movement in Europe, I reckon in the world. I think it's absolutely amazing where we've got. So I was pretty chuffed with our manifesto. I was absolutely over the moon that I got to create the vision of a national education service, cradle to grave, free at the point of need, with early years as an absolute focus, making sure that everybody has the best opportunity, because health, education and housing are your three pillars of social mobility, and without them you're not getting very far in life. And that's one of the lessons my granddad taught me when I was very young, and that's what the Conservatives have been snatching away from us at the moment and from our young people's futures. And we gave not just hope for a better future for people, but we actually gave the blueprint of how we could do it. We built on the 1945 Labour manifesto, and we said we were going to blow the socks off that and finish the work that we started back then. And we wasn't going to apologise for it, and we wasn't going to scapegoat people as part of it. We were going to be inclusive, and we was going to be bold for Britain and our place in the world, and unapologetic about that. So I think it was absolutely brilliant where we were. I was really proud and I thought it was fantastic. But that wasn't the best moment for me of the general election. Even being Jeremy wasn't the best moment for me of the general election. The best moment for me of the general election was the Tories manifesto. I mean, I'll admit, I said to my husband, they're going to pull something out of the bag. There's something going on here. It's not going to be like this. This cannot be it. And not only was that it, Theresa May came out and said, not only are we going to steal your house from under you, but don't worry, we'll wait till you're dead. That was the punchline. I was like, yes, I punched the air. I skipped limped up and down my road as all the former Tory party activists were saying, Ange, they were miserable as sin. All of them, there was about 2 or 3 in my constituency, to be fair, because we are safe Labour, but they were miserable anyway. You know, even the doors that used to vote Tory was like, you know, I can't vote for them with what they're doing. And the mask really slipped because they try to speak the language of socialism. They try to pretend that they're the party of aspiration. They try to say that they want to help people. They even said that I'm an example of conservatism because I was born in a council house. My mum couldn't read or write. I was pregnant at 16. My parents were on welfare recipients, and I was on all of the targets you don't want to be on. You know, I was on every list you don't want to be in, and I was in a priority area, as the council called it. I was a free school meals child. I failed my GCSE, so I was definitely that child. And they said, well, Angie, look, you did all right. You're exactly what Conservatives are about. If you work hard, you'll do well. The truth is, that's not true. Every single one of my friends worked as hard as me. Most of them worked harder than me and got better GCSE results than I did, and still to this day work harder than I do. And yet the system is against them. If you're disabled, if you're black, if you're from a working class background, if your mum and dad don't know the person who's part of that little society, then you're not going to get on in life, because the Tories like a rigged system. Because no other system can allow someone like Boris Johnson to get to the position that he's got to on talent. But we know that we're the party of true aspiration. We're the party of grit, and it's through our Sure Start centres, our council house building, our welfare state, all the things, the National Health Service, all the things that Labour have introduced, the Open University, you know, all of those things that we've built time and time again. It's like, what did the Romans ever do for us? Labour have created the opportunities that the Tories constantly try to dismantle. And if there was ever a product of what you stand for, it's the opportunities that you've given me. So when Jeffrey says, I'm, you know, a star and he's proud of me, all I can say to you and to Jim and to the other activists and members that have been lifelong supporters of socialism and what Labour values stand for is thank you. Because if it wasn't for what you fight for every single day, I wouldn't be the confident person that I am today. Because when I was that 16-year-old pregnant with the world telling me that I wasn't good enough, I felt ashamed. And it's only through my principles of being in this family, of the movement, that I actually realised that I shouldn't feel ashamed of who I am. I should celebrate who I am, and I should be given every opportunity like everybody else. And you know what? Not just one opportunity, but if I need a second chance, then you should give me a second chance. And that's what we're trying to build in Labour, and that's what we stand for. Because what worries me today, what really worries me today, is those teenage girls like I was, who are that vulnerable person who's had their PIP payment removed, or somebody that's been let down, that veteran that hasn't had the support, that fought for our country, that is now homeless and people walk by. Those opportunities that were there for me are not there for them now. You know, the things that were there for me, the Sure Start centres are being lost at record levels. Adult education, pretty much all but non-existent, especially those courses that they consider don't get you a job. Well, I learnt BSL at adult school, at night school, and I can sign now, and you know, it hasn't got me a job, but it makes me one of only a very few number of MPs that can use BSL, and I'm sure, you know, those skills are brilliant. My mum, who went on a cookery course for 8 weeks, was able to keep us at home and not end up in care because she was able to cook us a meal. You know, what value do we place on people's opportunity to get out of the house and not be lonely? And that to me was what our National Education Service was about. It was about not just thinking of it as it's a means to a job. Of course, jobs are important, and we know the world of work is changing, automation, and people are not going to be in the same jobs all their lives. They're going to have to retrain. But our National Education Service was much more than employment. It was about what sort of society are we? What do we hold dear, and what is education about? It's about improving communities. It's about giving people opportunities. It's about making sure that people don't feel isolated and feel like they've missed their opportunity or somehow that they're failures in life. And all of those avenues that were open to people like me are gone. I was able to get a council flat. How many can get a council flat now? You know, Margaret Thatcher sold them off and have not created new social housing. They call it what's affordable housing? It's so subjective, you know. To say affordable housing, we need council housing, and we need it sharpish, because we don't need private landlords making huge amounts of money in squalor of people living in their houses. So our manifesto was about common sense, and you know, just to sort of finish off, one of the big campaigns that I've been involved in that I'm really proud of since becoming a Member of Parliament was Jeffrey's private members bill for opt-out of organ donation. And the fantastic work that Jeffrey did with the Daily Mirror has resulted in Theresa May saying that she will make sure that she puts that into Parliament and enacts that. So I'm absolutely proud that Jeffrey gave me the opportunity to come on board with his campaign, and I'm proud of the work that Jeffrey did. And I'm, you know, really happy to be with you here today. And hopefully you're proud of your 3 MPs and the councillors and the leaders that you've got in this room, because I just want to say a little bit about local government, because one of the things I learned as a trade union rep, when I first became a rep, it was quite easy because the government at the time was a Labour government and was giving us loads of dough. It was always like for a project, they had to create a new thing, you know, they always attack, you know, the way we got it wasn't always brilliant, but we got money. I remember having parent support advisors and creating these new teams in local government. It was brilliant. It felt great, but we whinged, because you always do. I remember going for pay rises at 11%, and if we got 6%, we thought, all right. You know, at 6% now, we'd be, whoop, you know. I remember the good old days, but it didn't feel very good at the time, but they were. And, you know, now we've had 8 years of austerity facing local government. And I remember being a union rep when I was doing mass redundancies. We started off doing one-to-one meetings with people. We ended up doing just bringing a group together like in this room and doing mass meetings, because we were losing so many public service workers, so many decent workers that have worked and done a good job for us. And it's easy to take power and to look after your communities when you've got the means to do it. It is hard to have to deal with what our local government representatives have had to do over the last number of years. And I have the utmost respect for the work they do, because I would rather them help and do their best and prioritise the money they've got in the area that we know we need it the most, than have somebody else like a Tory come in and look after their own and leave people like I was deserted without a voice. So I want to end by thanking our local government colleagues who do a tremendous job despite the situation they've been in, and say when the next Labour government come in, the time's going to be good again, and we're going to be able to support our communities, and we're going to be proud of the work that we do to make sure that we build a country that works for the many and not the few. Thank you. I was writing them so I could take a few. Okay, so in terms of free school meals, I was the recipient of free school meals, and it was the only hot meal that I got of my day when I was young. So I see the importance of them, but not just from my own anecdotal experience. Actually, the coalition government commissioned a report into school meals, free school meals, and they said by providing free school meals for everyone at primary and junior level, that it actually raises attainment and does so much more in the classroom. You know, you referred to them eating junk, you know, and not eating properly, and that really does have an effect on children's ability to learn as well. So that's why in our manifesto we said that we would ensure that free school meals was a priority. And linking it to the money, the pupil premium, that is a problem. I don't think that really, you know, and not only that, but the government has tried to skewer who comes under that. In fact, they took free school meals out of their poverty targets. They actually removed them as if they weren't there anymore as part of their funding formula. So there's much more to that, because you have to be on 16,000 or less to qualify for free school meals. Well, 16,000 per annum is a very, very low income. So if you're on 18,000 a year and you've got a child, that is a really, really low income. It's a really difficult task to raise somebody. So I actually think it goes beyond where the current cut-off is. There's many working families at the moment that are struggling, that do not get the eligibility for that actually Labour want to promote and encourage and support as well in terms of that. In terms of the budget cuts to schools, the government announced 1.3 billion extra in July for schools, but it wasn't extra money. It was money that they took out of Healthier Schools Fund, which was about how we make our children more healthy, which was about food and PE and everything else. And they took it from other departments. They stole it out of their free schools programme, so I don't know where they're going to find the rest of the money from, to plug the gap this year and give 1.3 billion. But they've taken 2.7 billion already out of schools. So it's a bit like me giving you a tenner but taking 20 quid out your back pocket. It's not money. And not only did they do that, because they'll tell you we're putting record levels of funding into schools. That's correct. But they're also giving schools a record amount of costs. So they're pushing down more costs onto schools. So even though there's more money going into schools, real terms, there's a cut. And the IFS have even said that there's still around a 5% cut. It was 6.5%, it's now gone down to 5%, which means our schools are facing a crisis. And the money that they plugged, so it'd be interesting what comes out of the budget, to be honest, because the money that Justine Greening used was not Treasury money, it was capital money that she plugged into revenue spend. It's one-off. Council leaders, you've got loads of reserves. Oh, so you can spend it once, you can't keep spending it year upon year. So that's the problem that Justine Greening has, because she hasn't got that funding beyond this budget. So it'd be interesting to see what the government do there. And of course, lifting the public sector pay cap, there's no point in doing that if you just pass those cuts on to public services. So if the schools have to face the challenge of meeting those costs, that will be more cuts and more jobs and more services lost. We said that we'd spend, in fact, I was criticised for the amount of money that we put into our manifesto for schools. Can we afford it? Well, my question is, can we afford not to do it? Absolutely. Because we have a skills crisis in this country. And this is why we have so many people from outside this country coming to work here, because without them, our public services would be gone. People come to this country and they make us rich by doing that. They come here, they work here, they pay their taxes, and they plug those vital public services that we currently cannot provide because we have a skills shortage. So you can't really square that, you can't put a circle into a square peg. There's a problem there. The government and, this whole Brexit idea that, we can curb immigration. Well, you won't do that if you don't invest in young people and skills, because until we get the skills that we require in this country, we are already in crisis. The nurses, we dramatically dropped since the bursaries had gone for nursing. We do not have the numbers of nurses even registering. Teachers, we have an absolute teaching crisis. The day after the Brexit result, the government went round Europe asking for European teachers, trying to get them at a premium. So we take other workers from other countries because we don't train our own. We have got to start investing in our young people, and that means putting that money into our schools. And this government says we can't afford it. We can. They cut the taxes to corporations. All we said is just restore it to where it was in 2010. It wasn't even where it was in Margaret Thatcher's time. It was 10% lower than where it was in Margaret Thatcher's time. And yet we were said that it was unreasonable, we can't do it. We said that 95% of British taxpayers would pay exactly the same under a Labour government. We absolutely guaranteed it. This government didn't. They said they'd increase national insurance contributions. We didn't. We said 95% would pay the same. But the 5% at the top would pay a little bit more. And by doing that, our older people could die with dignity and respect, could have the support that they need at the end of their life, that our young people could go to college and university and not leave with £57,000 worth of debt, that our Sure Start centres could stay open, and that we could really build a Britain and a country that we could all be proud of. I think that's a very small price to pay to make sure that we have the public services we need to not only help our communities, but it also helps business. Because unless we start investing in infrastructure, then our businesses will start to crumble. They need that confidence and that support, and it's only through the public sector, through the state, that we can provide that level of support. So we make no apologies for that, that we would make sure that that money was there so that we don't have to lose teachers, support staff and vital public service workers that actually save us money. The government are spending more now on the debt. They've doubled the debt. They're spending more now on people having crisis management. It's constant crisis management. If you look at the NHS, you look at schools, if you look at the MOD, anything, it's just a complete chaos. So the money that they're spending is completely inefficient. What we've said is we will invest to make sure that we're not spending in an inappropriate way to keep people either in hospital or give people mental health problems that is not a necessity by the way that their living standards have decreased since this government came into power. So there's things that we can do, which means that you don't have to spend huge amounts of money, but it's about what your priorities are and where you spend it. And I think Labour's got an absolute vision for that, which means that not only do our schools get what they need, but the rest of our public services and our businesses can thrive as well. Like I said in my speech, you've got your finger on the absolute pulse of where the issues are, and some of the things that you asked me about. In the new year, we have I announced at conference two things. One, I gave the outline of our early years education report, which talked about going on to the next phase, not only our offer in terms of early years and the funding that we put within our manifesto, but it talked about the next phase of implementation and going to a supply-led workforce and a graduate-led workforce, and also looking, which I think it was the gentleman over there who said about the Scandinavian model. We are looking at how we can create the best model in early years, and we've focused a lot of our energies on that. You wouldn't believe it if you listen to the press and the news, because all they want to talk about is tuition fees, but that really annoys me. I even announced our National Education Service at a further education college to sort of drop the hint, because further education, which was Kathy's point, really changes lives, and the people that they teach and the challenges that people have to overcome when they go in through the further education route. Many of the learners have things outside of the classroom that impact on their ability to learn and to get on. Well, an FE have been absolutely transformational for people, and that's why I talk so passionately about it. So it's not just about targets, and this exclusion at the moment, which is what you were talking about, it's happening quite often, not only in FE at the moment, but also these apprenticeships that are coming forward, which comes to your point around how we deal with vocational qualifications and vocational routes. Not only is the curriculum narrowed, which first of all excludes more young people at an earlier age, I think it's even worse than it was when I was at school now, but the functional skills that people need, the bar's set way too high. They're not functional skills they need now. They need e-baccalaureate A stars to even get onto the apprenticeships. They call them level 4 apprenticeships, and people can't get on them. Our young people can't get access to them. There's just this big gulf for them to get over. So we're working on that now. We want to introduce Lord Sainsbury Review. We want T-levels, and I don't think they should sit outside of further education. This government have got like a complete blinker when it comes to further education and what further education can offer. I think the T-levels and technical schools can absolutely sit within further education. It's the right place for it to sit. So that's what my vision is for that going forward. In terms of Bill's point on government not putting people up for interview, why? I think it's because they're really not very good, and they've cottoned on. I think, one of the things I knew I was doing all right when every time, the press would ring me up and say, "Can you come in the programme and do this interview?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then half an hour later, we can't get a Conservative that'll come on, because every time I put myself up, the Tories pulled out. Because I don't know if anyone saw my interview with Michael Gove, but like literally I tore him to shreds because he needed it. You know, I never thought Michael Gove could sink any lower than he actually did. He's like a pantomime villain. Every time I go to a teachers' conference, I go, Michael Gove, I go, boo! I know, like, I can get the interaction with a conference by doing that, you know. So if it's a bit flat in the room, I just go, Gove! And everyone wakes up. But, you know, I didn't think Gove could sink any lower than he did with what he did to our education system. And Barry was right in terms of him smashing the education system. But, you know, he even in the general election tried to claim that the reason why schools were facing the pressures they were is because those migrant children were coming into our classrooms, you know. I mean, I didn't think he could scoop to a lower level, but he did. He even managed to do that. And, you know, so I was absolutely right to take him down. And every time we did, the government tried to pull back, and they're doing that now. And in fact, I don't even think they've got much people left now. Even the most sensible of their government has gone in the last 24 hours. They've managed to do Mr. Strong and Stable. You know, he's even weak and wobbly now. They're all over the place. They're an embarrassment. And, you know, even by being a lifelong Labour person, I'm absolutely devastated to see what's happening to our place in the world. You know, we've got really serious threats to us. You know, you've got Brexit negotiations, and quite frankly, it is Brexit. It is really, really not going well at all. And, you know, even by whether you were for or against it, what we're going to get at the end of it once they finish making us a laughing stock around Europe and the world. I mean, the only reason why Donald Trump isn't like completely off his rocker is because we look just like slightly as bad as him, where you've got Davis going around, you know, cracking jokes and them acting in the way they are. But they really are dragging Parliament down and dragging Britain down in the way that they're governing at the moment, and they need to step aside and let us take over. You know, we've got exactly, you know, honestly, like, we've got education orals on Monday, and the last time I did them, it really was like Ask the Opposition time, and Jeremy Corbyn did PMQs this week, and it was like, you know, it's like literally we're the government and they slag us off and ask us questions, because they never answer any. They just like come to us and sort of try and terrorise our manifesto, because they've run out of ideas. They're a busted flush. They've got no ideas for the country. They're letting our young people down. They're letting everybody down, and they need to move on. In terms of the point I made regarding the free school meals and breakfast, you know, I can relate to a lot of what you were saying, because, you know, we had like a quarter of sterilised milk, and, you know, you weren't allowed to touch that. There was definitely no cereal in our house, so that's why I talked about free school meals being more important. But what the Tories offered was, we'll take away free school meals and we'll replace it with a breakfast, and they funded it by 6p a breakfast. That's why I call them, you know, I said we get our recipes from Jamie Oliver, they get theirs from Oliver Twist. It really was like, you know. So, first of all, we think free school meals is the priority, but we recognise that free school breakfasts are important as well. And I've been working on how we can potentially create that and expand that, working with businesses as well, and actually trying to find funding to make sure that happens, so that every school can provide that for every young person. So what the Tories offered was a sleight of hand that was never going to be delivered on the back of a postage stamp to take away, which a lot of kids will not get into school in time for the breakfast, but will always be in for the lunch. And they wanted to replace the lunch with a breakfast, and we felt that was the wrong thing to do. The priority has to be lunch, but we recognise that having a good solid breakfast is important as well, so we want to try and do that, and we're working on it. In terms of the issue around private landlords, different rules and regs, you know, we've been chomping around at the ideas of rent controls, etc. I mean, you know, that's been talked about, and there's lots of things like social housing and sheltered accommodation that John Healy's team have been working on. But no matter how you cut it, the truth is a lot of people in private landlords' housing that shouldn't be there. They're not, you know, they shouldn't be in private accommodation. It shouldn't be within that market, and the market doesn't work for us for all those things you said, because you can live next door. One's in an ex-council house and they're paying double the amount than the person next door who's in a council house who's paying half the rents. We need council housing. And that's what Labour have promised. Not only will we build more housing so that people can get on the ladder and we can free up this surge in private landlords that have been making money off the back. People were doing it because you get more from that than you would from your pension. It became a very lucrative thing, but it was the state that was being hard done by. And we need to build council housing because we're looking at not increasing the demand, but actually increasing the supply in housing to deal with the housing shortage. The current government are looking at increasing the demand, which means that you get this inflation in house pricing and this race constantly where young people will never get a foot on the housing ladder. We think by building more council housing, we will simmer the market down instead of cooking it as it currently is, and we will help to ensure that we bring down rents that people are currently paying, and it will help the public purse by doing that. And I'm absolutely horrified at the thought of G4S having arresting powers because, quite frankly, they shouldn't even have a public contract. They shouldn't even have a public contract. And it's not because I'm anti-private, anti-business or whatever else. It's because they're disgusting and they've been proven time and time again to break the rules and to rob the public of their money. So, quite frankly, no way we don't want them in our public services. And we certainly don't want them having arresting powers. I've got an idea. Why don't we have more police? Just an idea. In terms of the current, it's incredulous, the current mess that the current government is in. I mean, if it wasn't so serious, it'd be laughable. Like even in the thick of it and all of these programmes, Yes Minister and all that, if they'd have tried to put a programme together like Theresa May, coughing, some guy offering her P45, all the set falling down, people would have said, that's a joke too far, that can't happen, The stuff that's going on at the moment, not even a scriptwriter would have written it in. It is such a tragedy, the current situation that we're in. And it's really bringing us down. When I was a home help, I got paid really low pay, but I was a hero. People loved what I did, and I was proud to say what I did. I get paid really well now, and I'm really, embarrassed to say what I do. For those that don't watch Question Time or the news that often, and they ask me what do, I go, I work in public service, and that's about as far as it goes. And then I start asking them about them, because all of us know by deflecting, you just ask someone about themselves and they'll talk more, and you're like, "Ooh, got away with that one." But there is a crisis in terms of, for me, being a member of Parliament is the absolute honour of public service. That's what it means to me. I've always been a public servant and I get a lot out of it. I did as a home help and I do as an MP, and it's an absolute privilege and an honour to do that. But there's certain people that are bringing our service down, and I don't want to be lumped and grouped in the category as some of those despicable individuals that are doing that. And I don't want to just say about Conservatives there, I have to be a bit cross-party on that, because it's not just one. And what I'm talking about in terms of that is some of the scandals we've had over the last few years. We've got to start redeeming ourselves. And not only in terms of that, but this current government, and I will blame this current government, is the way in which they've negotiated, the way in which they've done business, the way in which they've governed, is they've absolutely failed the people of Britain, and they need to go. They're well and truly past their sell-by date. We've got a plan for the future of Britain. We've got a bold plan that talks about how we can build a country that works for everyone, and it's not a slogan, it's an absolute blueprint to giving us pride in ourselves again. And that's what I think people are wanting in our communities, and the Tories are managing the decline, and we've all had enough of them. So the next general election couldn't come quick enough, and I'm sure I've got in the 2.5 years I've been in Parliament, I've got 3 books, I'm telling you, the bestsellers. So, I can never, it's been like it's been on acid house or something, politics, it's like Glastonbury outside Parliament most of the times with all of the stages and sets, so every time there's something going on, it's been absolutely incredulous for me as well. I've truncated my political career that I'm pretty certain I'm going to be Prime Minister in the next 18 months, After Jeremy Corbyn, may I add, after Jeremy Corbyn. I think, okay, Julie, I'm sorry I missed your question earlier, you're absolutely right. It's because I was all over the place, up and down. But in terms of our National Education Charter and conference, we set out a draft charter, and one of them was about accountability, local accountability, and what that means. And it comes back to, I think it was Barry's point actually as well, because he said, what's the role of the local education authority? What will be the role of local government in that? And me and Jeremy are going around the country in the new year to discuss about what that accountability will be. I'm absolutely clear that that accountability isn't there. In fact, to be fair, I sort of, last week I met with Ofsted Chief, but I met her on the Wednesday, and the Monday I had a big headline. I don't know if any of you saw it, where I said Ofsted's not fit for purpose. I thought, it'd set us off on the right track when I met with her. I didn't mean that to come out in the way that it did, but I thought, it breaks the ice. But actually, start as you mean to go on. But to be fair to Ofsted, they've criticised and raised the concerns that actually they can't get into multi-academy trusts, and they can't do the requirement in there as well. And we have got education questions on Monday, and this will come up again. But we want a fully accountable structure within our National Education Service. And I make no bones about saying that the international standard says a fully comprehensive state system is the best system that we can develop and gives every single child the best chance. So that's what I want to develop. And we're going around the country to look at how we can look at that and how we can build that in the way that what we've got currently, and how do we move towards a system without making what teachers are left escape because of all the change potentially that would happen within that. So we have some ideas on that, looking at how we can build in through devolution. The devolution agenda is something we can do there, opportunities there for the skills as well as the accountability. So I'm all ears on that, but I'm absolutely clear that academies currently, especially the multi-academy trusts, have a very lack of accountability. And I tell you another thing, schools that were rated outstanding that have not been Ofsteded or had any inspection for years. Some as old as my lad who's just about to leave their primary school because they've just been allowed to carry on because the results, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that because you've had an outstanding Ofsted 8 years ago that your school is the best school. So, I have a real problem with the current accountability and oversight and the Ofsted regime currently, and we want to change it. In terms of the important point that was raised about women in the party and the sexual harassment and the conflict in the party as well, there's two things really. One is the toxic environment that we've all been involved in over a period of time. It's felt pretty, even though I talked about the jubilation of the general election, prior to that I came into Parliament at a time where it was civil war. I felt like the adults were fighting each other, and I was a brand new kid in the arena, and I had to watch it, and it was heartbreaking to watch the amount of internal strife. When did we become the enemy of each other? When did someone become a Blairite, or someone became a fanatic momentumer, or we're all Labour. And throughout it all, I refuse to be pigeonholed, and I refuse to allow my comrade, brother and sister to be demonised in the way that some would like to. We have a broad church and we all discuss those issues, and we should all feel comfortable in it. But it's true that women and a lot of members, new members and old, have felt absolutely alienated by the process that we've been through. And we've got to start repairing that damage that was done. But we also have to not only look at our procedures, which we've done some of that, which around at conference we've got rule changes for Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, the rule changes that came in about how we deal with these issues. But the truth is, you can have all the rules in the world, but unless you enact them. And it's not about what you say, because all the political parties have been saying wonderful things. It's not about what you say, it's about what you do. And we have got to start doing to prove to people and to give people the confidence, and young people, young women in particular, the confidence to come forward and say this is not okay, and they've got to be listened to, and action is going to be taken, because otherwise people will not come forward in an atmosphere where they don't see action. And we've got to create a sisterhood. I'm trying to do that in what I do, is trying to create a sisterhood where young women have the ability and confidence to speak out, and when they do, we have a responsibility, I have a responsibility to support you in doing that. We all do. And I hope that we will create an environment and a culture where people feel that they will have the support they need to speak out, not just about the most severe sexual harassment or abuse or feeling of intimidation, but actually being able to stand in a room and actually make a contribution in a meeting without being booed or shouted down by another colleague. And when we see it happen, we call it out and allow people the opportunity to speak in our party, because it's absolutely right that they do. So it does start with us, and we've got to lead by example, and we've got to start walking the walk and not just talking the talk. And I hope that that's what's going to happen in the Labour Party from now on. In terms of people falling through the system and the university's duty of care, I suppose one of the reasons why I talk about my upbringing and the fact that I need a second and third chance is because I do think at the moment, and I talked about it in my speech, that those gaps, those runs on the ladder are becoming increasingly more, difficult to get to the next one. They're spaced out too much. It was the point I was making on the apprenticeships as well. And those opportunities, not just in universities, but in all of our public services that were so vital, that were there to help people get on and to make sure that people had those safety nets, are just, the net's frayed. It's not there. The police are in crisis. They can't look after the mental health on our streets, the issues in our schools, the issue in our universities. It's because the system, the cuts that have happened to our public services have left us absolutely without the safety net that the Labour government created in the first place. And we've got to heal that, and we've got to do something about that. Because the truth is, those problems don't go away. Older people tonight are dying without the care they need. That's the system that we've currently got at the moment. We don't need to be in that system. It doesn't go away. But if you take away the service, what happens is it just creates crisis and problems in our communities that we will have to spend more money on addressing in the future. So we have to do it now, and we have to invest in our public services. And it comes on to that point about lifelong learning and the barriers that are in place. And that's why we wanted a national education service built on the same principles as the National Health Service, cradle to grave, free at the point of use. Because otherwise there are these barriers, and you can argue about more children, more disadvantaged children going to university than ever before. But again, the opportunity for young people or people, when did we stop caring about what we wanted to be? The dreams that we had when we were kids. I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a scientist, I want to be an astronaut. And then somehow life gets in the way, and you end up in a job, and then you think you can't go back, you can't change where you are, or I can't do that arts degree because it might not get me a job at the end of it, and I can't justify the money that I'd be investing in myself to do that. We can't have that situation. We need a diverse curriculum. We need the diversity of people. We need people to have a love of what they're, and celebrate what they're good at. Because actually, arts and culture, the money we make off that, the GDP, it's not just a lot of fluff. Let me tell you, Oasis, Beatles and all that, we get loads of money from things like that. So actually artists and music and musicians are actually really good, as well as footballers, as well as doctors and everything else. So we've got to get rid of those barriers, because ultimately we'll all do better by giving people the opportunity to be the people they are and express themselves in the way that's right for them. So under the National Education Service, those barriers would not exist, because it would be free for everyone at the point of use. You wouldn't have the barriers of having your benefits taken away or anything else, actually, because we see it as an absolute public good and a public service and an absolute human right to get access to that education. In terms of the funding, I think I mentioned it before in my speech, and that was that we said that we'd reverse the corporation tax cuts giveaway that they currently give, and we costed it out. The only numbers in the Tory manifesto booklet was the page numbers. They haven't, they have not costed their manifesto at all. They just keep coming up with things all the time, and they don't even give I will give you the costings later. Theresa May in her conference speech announced that she was going to have 150 new free schools, and I don't where the money is, because it's still, they've got the magic money tree, absolutely. They got it for the DUP, they're all right. Their schools aren't having a cut at the moment. So the truth is that the money can be found, and we said we earmarked our education funding would come from reversing the corporation tax giveaways. That's what we said we'd spend it on. So that's where the money's coming from. In terms of the Belfast Declaration, we've been absolutely clear, you know, we're proud of what we've done in this country in terms of trying to create a two-state solution to the current circumstances, and we've been absolutely clear on that all the way along. Our policy hasn't changed. To suggest or to think that anti-Semitism has been in the party for 5 minutes or under a particular leader is to be naive to the problem. Anti-Semitism is alive and kicking in our party and in our communities, and we have got to take every opportunity to stop it, to stamp it out. No place for it in our party. And I think our actions at conference, our policy is absolutely in the right place, and you know, we absolutely want to see a two-state solution to that current situation, and we haven't moved or deviated away from the Balfour Declaration on that. In terms of universities run like corporations for profit, absolutely, that's what's happening now. It's this commerciality rather than what is education about, and this was the bit around why a lot of education now has been restricted, and you know, even the Conservatives want to stop you what you can teach these days as well, which, you know, you alluded to in your contribution. I do think that we've got to get away from this massive corporation and commercialisation of our education system. You know, it's an absolute human right, it's an absolute public service, and, you know, it shouldn't be corporated in the way that it has. And in fact, we had some really good concessions in the higher education bill at the last parliament that I was dealing with, because they wanted Ronald McDonald universities everywhere, and we managed to get them to concede that point. And the reason they did, which was shameful, is because Theresa May cared more about cutting the number of overseas students, when anyone will tell you in our university, if it wasn't for overseas students, they fund our education system. So shame on her on that. But we all know she was dog whistling for UKIP. But luckily, and rather absolutely warmed my cockles, if I'm honest, it failed miserably. Chasing UKIP and a racist agenda, dog whistle agenda against people that come to our country to work or study didn't get traction in this general election, which I'm absolutely proud of, and I'm proud of the British public for that. They absolutely rejected that type of politics, which was good to hear. In terms of the zero-hour contracts, I was one of them. We used to call them casual workers back in the day. You know, they've got this fancy new name of zero-hour contracts, but we've been unequivocal in terms of the expansion of zero-hour contracts and the way they've been used to undermine workers' rights and workers' wages and terms and conditions, and that we wouldn't allow that to happen. We would outlaw them being used in that way. We got criticism for it. Some said it's unworkable. Some people like having casual zero-hour contracts, but we said we'd absolutely make sure not only would we give trade unions more rights, because we think they're an absolute key role in making sure we have good working conditions, but we would stop employers exploiting workers in the way that they currently do. In terms of the teacher recruitment and retention issue, I think there's a couple of things I'm working with the trade unions on at the moment around that. One is around incentives into trying to, you know, if we allow teachers to be professionals and respected them instead of, you know, what this government have done, and that's try and dehumanise them, demoralise them and de-equip them for the skills that they learn as teachers. If we respected them as teachers, first of all, that would go a long way to allowing teachers to carry on and do their job. But I'm also looking at the moment from day one is what can I ask teachers not to do? Not what can I change, what can I, you know, make. I'm looking at what do teachers currently have to do that makes no difference to a young person's lives that they're trying to help, and, you know, try and take some of the workload burdens off teachers by the data gathering and all the other things that they have to do, hoops they have to jump through outside of the classroom, which are really starting to make teachers leave the profession. So I want to bring the professionalism back, respect teachers for the role that they do, pay them appropriately, make them accountable, I'm happy for that, but also making sure that, you know, Justine Greening said she wanted to bring work-life balance by allowing part-time and job shares to teachers. I said just give them a full-time job that is actually a full-time job instead of taking up all their lives. That would be a start, and that's what I'm working with the trade unions.